This conference will now be recorded.
Hi everyone. So as part of session 2, we created case type and various data types, right? Like we created employee details, project details, and leave details data types. Okay. So as part of this session, we'll be designing a screen one called employee details. Okay. So when we were creating leave request case type, so we got the section created automatically, right? So that is called employee details. Okay. So in the employee details section, so we'll be showing uh, employee ID, employee name, designation, and project name, and supervisor name also. Okay. So these are part of employee details and project details data types, right? So here what we are going to do is we will be creating the sections under employee details and project details, and we will reuse those sections in the work class section that is called employee info. Okay, so we can also directly call these properties in the employee info section using the page references, but having the sections under the data type, so we'll have more reusability. Okay, and we can call data class sections in the work class through clipboard page. Okay, so let's go to the employee data type and create a section called employee details. So in this screen we will be calling employee ID, employee name, and designation. So, but here we have employee ID and employee name are part of data class, right? So we can go to that class and we can drag the properties directly. Okay. So here, so we have various predefined design templates, so we can use them, or so we can use the the regular view of the section. So by clicking on that link called convert to full section editor. Okay, so this is the view how we see in Pega 7. Okay, so we'll be also discussing about the design templates in one of the session. Okay, so now let's use the properties employee ID and first name, the employee last name, and designation, right? So designation is part of employee details. So we can take it from here. Okay, and let's save it. Now, similarly, let's go to the project details, data class, and create a section called project details and use the properties like project name and supervisor name. Okay. So yeah, let's click on this one. So project name and the supervisor name, right? So let's go to the property and drag the project name, and supervisor name is nothing but the first name property, right? Like, so while defining the details for the project details, while defining the data, right? So we use the first name, so we can use the same. So we can take the control, sorry, here in the data capture, so we have a text input and call the first name. So label, we can change it. Let's say if you want to show the last name of the supervisor, so we can show it. So I'm using the first name here and the label is supervisor name. Okay. So now if you want to call these sections in the work class section, so we need pages, right? Because we have multiple properties in each section. So in order to hold the multiple properties, we need a page property. Okay. So let's create employee details or simply EMP details and project details in the leave request class. Or we can also create in the work class if we have the multiple case types. So here we have only one case type, right? So we can create uh, both the pages here. So while creating the employee page, so we need to specify the corresponding class so that we can use the properties which are part of that employee class through this page reference, right? Let's call the class EMP details and save it. So similarly, let's create project details page by referring to the project details class, so that whatever the properties we have in the project details can be used through page reference. Let's call the project details. So now let's open the section called employee details, which is part of leave request case type, and invoke both the sections we created. Okay. So in order to call one section in another section, as you know that, so we have to use this embedded section. And so we'll be able to call the sections which are part of leave request or its pattern parent classes or directed classes, right? But so using the clipboard page, so we can call the sections from other classes as well. So the class is EMP details, and the clipboard page is employee details, and we'll be able to call the sections which are part of employee details or its pattern parent or directed classes. Okay, so we have other options also here. So like use data page, meaning so we'll be able to call the sections from the class where the data page belongs to. Okay, and we have use page defined by property. So you can specify the property, and whatever the section you assign to that property will be invoked in the runtime. Okay, so you have to make sure so you assign the section to the specified property. Okay, so here we are using the clipboard page, and we call that emp details and click on submit. So now similarly, so we can call our project details section by using the project details page as a clipboard page. Okay, so now we can take one more layout, and also without layout also you can directly call it, right? So embedded section, so we have already layout, so you can call in the same layout. So specify the project details, sorry, yeah, first let's select use clipboard page and specify the data class called project details, then specify the page called project details, and we'll be able to call that section, right? Okay, so this is already being invoked in the flow action, right? So we don't need to create any flow action or flow. So if we execute this case type, so you will be seeing this as a screen one. So click on leave request, and so click on done. So we can restrict this screen, like so we can avoid this by enabling some checkbox in the case type. So we'll do that later. So now let's click on done. And we will be presented with the screen one that is called employee details. So here what we need to do is, so we need to set some values to the properties, right? Or like, so we can just update the page uh, with the class. So I will explain that later. So here now what we can do is, in the pre-processing, we have to load the employee details and the project details. Okay, so that like so we don't need to specify, we don't need to load the class separately. Okay, so in the pre-processing, what we can do is we can take the employee ID from the clipboard. So let's say uh, if I log in into the application, uh, so it will take like, so assume that my operator ID is employee ID. So operator IDs would be part of operator ID page, right? So we can capture that. Okay. So here I'm trying to avoid uh, using the activities, and so we can also for learning purpose, like we can also try using activities. But so for loading the employee information and project details uh, based on the employee ID, so we can use the data pages. Okay. So for loading the employee details, we can pass the employee ID, and we will get the project ID from the employee details, right? From the employee details table, and we will use that project ID and we will call the project details data page to get the corresponding details. Okay, so we can achieve all these things through a data page, and we call those data pages in the data transform. Okay, so by the time I see the screen, so I should be able to see all my employee details and project name as well as the supervisor name. Okay, so let's create a data transform called load employee details. Okay, so data transform is part of the data model category. So load EMP details. So if you go to the employee table, right, employee data type, so we have a page data page, right? So D underscore employee details. So as you know that, like, so every time, so when we create a data type, so the data pages will be created automatically. So we can use page type data page here because we need to take the single employee details. Okay, so if you want to show the list of employees on the UI, for example, so we can use this employee details list, and we have a savable database if you want to save the data to the database. Okay, so I will explain, I will do some scenario using savable as well as part of other sessions. Okay, so now let's take this D underscore employee details. So for this, you have to pass the employee ID as a key, right? So by default, you see the employee ID defined as a parameter. So when you run this, you must need to pass the employee ID. Let's say, assume that my employee ID is T2005, right? So it will load the employee information of that operator ID. Okay. So now, but we need to take the employee ID dynamically, right? So from operator ID page. So, and this page data can be assigned to employee details page. Okay. So you need to pass the parameter like this. So employee ID is the parameter, and we can take it from operator ID page. So operator ID dot py user identifier. Okay, and so this is the page data, right? So whatever the data loaded on the data page will be assigned to this employee details, and we refer the properties from this page on the section, right? So we'll be able to see the data. Okay. Now, so we need to load the project details as well. So if we look at this one, so we have a project ID on the employee details. So after executing this step, so you will see the employee project ID on this page, and you pass that as a parameter to the project details data page. Okay, so you can use project details page structure data page, and here the project ID would be the primary key, and I'm passing it from EMP details. And this data will be assigned to project details. And since we referred properties from this page in this section, so you will see the data. Okay. So I logged in with admin at the rate of HCL, so it will be failed. Okay. So we will see what will happen if employee ID doesn't exist. Let's say we have admin at the rate of HCL here. So if it takes that ID dynamically, so it is unable to, you know, retrieve the data from the data type, right? So we'll see those exceptions. So for now, I'm going to create a new operator ID with my employee ID. Okay. So T2001, and when I log in with that operator ID, so I'll be able to see my employee information as part of screen one. Okay. So this is my operator ID. Sorry, T2005, right? Just give me 1 second. It is T2005. So I'm defining my email ID. Okay. So now I'm going to log in with this operator ID and we launch the leave request. So instead data pages, so we can also achieve through activity. Okay, so you can try that as well. So if you need any help, so you try that. So if you're stuck or like, so if you need any help, so ping me on WhatsApp. I will help you on that. Okay. So now let's create leave request. So did we call in the flow action? So let's go to the flow action. Yeah, so we need to call in the pre-processing, right? So why? Because the moment I see the screen, these details should be loaded. So this must be invoked from pre-processing. So we'll call a few things in the post-processing also. For example, so I need to run some utility, some activity or data transform based on this data. In that case, like, so we need to call in the post processing. So that means like, so the moment you click on submit, the post processing rules will be executed. While loading the screen, the pre-processing rules will be executed. Okay, now you see, so we can test this one, so whether it is working as expected or not. So for T2005, so you can go to the data type and you can verify it, right? And so we can make this data read only so that user will not be able to edit it. Okay. So if we go to, let's open the records. And once user click on submit, so in the next screen, the employee should be able to see all his or her leave details. Okay, so that we will implement as part of next session. So now let's check whether it is working as expected or not. So employee ID is T2005, right? So the designation is project manager, and the first name is Satyendra, last name is Kumar. So let's go to this. So project manager Kumar and the supervisor of this employee. So take the project ID, that is PRG06, and go to the project details. So you need to check the supervisor of the project PRJ06, that is Srikanth Kumar, right? So on the project name is management. So Srikanth, because we displayed only the first name and the project name is management. Okay. So we can also trace the pre-data transform to see how the data is getting displayed. So that we will do in the next class. And if there are any errors, for example, uh, the employee ID is not defined in the employee table, or the operator who logged in into the application is not defined, right? So in that case, we have to display some error message. And okay, and if like so data is displayed, and if user click on submit, and in the next screen, so we should show leave details. Okay, so that we will be doing as part of next session. Thank you.